So I got 10 minutes to do a 20-minute presentation.
I'm thirsty, Mike. 5.
I have a confession to make, too. I was going to try to stay incognito this conference, but I am the big guy with the beard. Thanks for fingering me, Gene. So I will talk quickly and use small words only. BCAP you will learn a whole lot more about if you make sure you talk with and meet all my wonderful associates here and go out to our booth, and there'll be a BCAP session Thursday morning that I invite you all to attend. We do know a bunch of things about buildings. We know that, at the point of new construction, we have an opportunity to impact energy efficiency and energy savings and a pertinent environmental savings for a great long time. Likewise with existing buildings. However, we have learned over time that we have many implementation challenges with reaching those goals. We know that support and training is inadequate in most states and has ebbed and flowed over the years at the federal level as well. There's a huge misunderstanding of the requirements and how to build them into buildings. Compliance is low. We know that. BCAP knows that because we did a savings gap analysis some years ago and took a look at all of the evaluations that had been done up until about 5 years ago when I ran out of space to put them in files. And we know also that we're not getting the projected energy savings that everybody just assumes is what we get from energy codes. It happens automatically, right? Same thing on the evaluation side. Code efficacy is not often measured, and it's measured in dozens of different ways. And in order to get the support of policymakers, we have to have some sort of metric. You get what you measure, right? And also, we're not getting the support of utilities who we feel support so many energy efficiency programs and public benefit fund programs as well. How do we get there? Evaluation is very expensive. The folks in the Northwest will tell you that. They do it. California does it regularly. And then finally we learned, in looking at all these myriad evaluations, that there are no national standards. In fact, there's very little integration of energy code evaluation with many other efficiency program evaluation standards and discussions. So what do? It's easy, right? We find ways to improve compliance, and then we measure their efficacy in a way that hopefully will support energy codes or bring support to energy codes in the future. So to that end, we BCAP, with the assistance of the Energy Foundation, decided to hold some roundtables where we just took a look at these two issues: compliance, improving compliance, and how and where and with what do we measure it. We started out with the first roundtable session at the ResNet conference this February, where we had primarily residential program providers, HERS raters, again, HERS program providers, advanced codes, or I should say advanced building program providers. Followed that, we were invited by NYSERDA to do another roundtable there with a very mixed group, residential and commercial audiences and program people, code officials, third-party code compliance providers, et cetera. And we're going to do number 3 here tomorrow night, so you're going to have another chance to look at this as I zip through it. And then finally, we're going to follow up next week at the Westford Symposium with a commercial audience primarily. Some of the feedback we got. First roundtable, number 1, energy codes are poorly enforced. All the program people, all the people in the trenches out there were seeing that while they were doing their advanced buildings programs, they saw that the code officials had a very low knowledge level. They also lacked energy and performance, building performance knowledge, which oftentimes stood in the way of the advanced building program. So sometimes the codes got in the way of doing better than codes, and we certainly don't want that to happen. The code officials, code enforcement officials, were looking for education in energy specifically and in building science, not what BS might be construe it to mean. And they had little time in their work-a-day life to concentrate on energy codes. Finally, with respect to existing buildings, those code enforcement, energy code enforcement on existing buildings was virtually non-existent. We did find that amongst those energy providers, the HERS infrastructure was very interested and willing, and in some cases engaged in assisting with this issue. We did hear some things about training that had to change. The program providers thought that we needed to stop training in silos. So often we train code officials in one room and builders in another room, designers in another room. We never bring them together. So we're missing opportunities to do a far better job. And I see a compadre of mine nodding his head who only believes we should not train in silos. So we got some good feedback here tomorrow night, I hope, as well. So get them out of the silos, get them in the same room. And finally, we need to do better and more comprehensive needs assessments before we actually do that training. Don't just go out and hit the street with the same old stuff, the same old training. Let's go out and ask them what they really need, how they really learn. From roundtable number 2 on the compliance side, we got the discussion sort of fell into 4 pieces. First of all, there was the feeling that we need additional infrastructure, okay? The feeling that we got was that the traditional code enforcement infrastructure alone is not going to get energy done. It's not going to get better building performance done. So do we need to take a look at third-party or special inspection infrastructure additions? Do we need to look at HERS, or home energy ratings, as codes, as is used in some places around the country? And do we have to add other folks in the building construction stream, such as building supply houses and certain highly trained design professionals or builders who might act as mentors in that stream to help bring the general consciousness up? We also needed, the group felt that more tools and training were needed. The general comment was that the ResCheck and ComCheck tools were fantastic tools that had changed over the last 10, 12 or more years compliance across the country, and we need to make sure that they're still robust and still utilized and taken advantage of. We heard about IC3, a private software product that Texas A&M is producing, the Energy Services Lab, and what about other private compliance tools that might help us out here? Also, we talked about tools that could be integrated in the design process with the various CAD programs, such as integrating ComCheck or Portfolio Manager. Target Finder is done in some places. Again, we heard that we need to end silo training and provide more hands-on training as stakeholders prefer to learn in the trenches, in the buildings, in the homes that they work in. 2 other sectors that we found great interest in is that we heard that consumers and stakeholders needed to be given a value proposition to see the level of compliance brought up and to help that compliance level be brought up. Do we need outreach to home buyers and owners on energy codes? Do we need to emphasize the life, health, safety aspects of energy codes? Code officials spend most of their time on what they consider the primary codes, the life, health, safety codes. And the energy code, for various reasons, has always been kind of considered secondary. So, we need to emphasize that the energy codes do contain considerable life, health, safety elements, and so that they're more seriously worked with. And we also need to train everybody in the community, code officials, the policy makers, everybody in the whole train to get this to come along. And then finally, a number of pilot ideas came out. We felt that the idea of utilizing the home energy rating infrastructure and raters as a compliance mechanism was worth getting into, but we needed to put together some really well-researched pilots to take a look at that, take a look at all the successes and failures of the folks who've tried it in various places, and put together some good pilots and come up with some recommendations. Again, the code mentors of various sorts, perhaps the estimators at building supply houses or design professionals in a certain region or community, and circuit rider training approaches were worth trying. So we need to pilot those kinds of approaches as well. And we also have to conduct and learn how to conduct and develop some guidelines for conducting training assessments so that we don't just jump up and do the same old stuff and have the same old results. There's some indication that jurisdictions and states that have adopted advanced energy codes are seeing higher compliance levels. And we heard that from several areas, and we need to research that and try to figure out why that is. There's some interest in energy code professionals being developed in communities, that from Massachusetts that you'll probably hear more about this week. And finally, there was some suggestion that we might start a national focus group to flesh some of these different pilot ideas out. Then, again, you get what you measure. How do we evaluate all this? What criteria do we use? One of the things we learned in the BCAP savings gap analysis was that these evaluations were done over the last 15 years. The data was all over the map. We were pulling this data together to try to figure out what the gap was, what the savings gap was between or in the savings lost by low compliance. And we couldn't because all the measurements were all over the map. So, we need to come up with some criteria. We need to do benchmarking and baselining as a baseline for that. And it was generally thought that ARA, or the stimulus provided by ARA, could provide resources for guidance on a national metric. And then, could we somehow or other connect the compliance work, the fine compliance work that PNNL is putting together, somehow or other with determining what we were getting in terms of energy savings and some more real metrics that we might be able to take to the bank, so to speak. Is this evaluation better achieved if we're looking at compliance from a performance method? Do we need to be doing more modeling when we do our evaluations? I don't know. And then, of course, we need metrics we can sell for support. One of the reasons that we don't have a great deal of support at the state level is that codes are assumed to be automatic. Again, we get the compliance because they're law. Many public benefit funds don't allow credit for utilities to invest in energy code support. So, in order to make any of this thing, or any of this come through, and in order to, sell the savings, the great savings that can be had with energy codes, we've got to measure it in some manner that makes sense for those who might invest in it. Okay. So, thoughts on evaluation. States need to use some money from the ARA stimulus bill for evaluation. Somehow that needs to be encouraged. Measuring energy savings, in true energy savings will help draw sustainable support and increase integration with beyond code programs where possible. Advocates in the room, the advocates we find for energy codes are never in the room to hear about the implementation problems, and we need to open that dialogue as well. And, should we be evaluating residential and commercial code successes with modeling and then true up against actual energy bills? Do we need to establish a national evaluation criteria? Some of the folks in the room indicated to us that there was no connection between energy efficiency program evaluation and energy code evaluation. And could this be an extension of the ARA 90% work? Second evaluation, again, we heard, develop a national guidance or standard. Can this be somehow connected to the 90% compliance work that's being done? Do we need to research potential for increased utility and public benefit fund involvement? And do we need to engage in the national evaluation, energy efficiency evaluation process? Finally, that a National Energy Code evaluation working group should be formed. So, again, I zipped through this very quickly and stumbled over half my words, but I would ask that you consider that we all need to share our ideas on these issues. We need to join in the national discussion and, of course, raise that discussion in your jurisdictions and states and help us try to improve the energy codes and their compliance and evaluation. We've got a session going on tomorrow night that I encourage you to join. It's at 6 o'clock right after the Cracker Barrel for a couple hours. First beer's on us and the Energy Foundation. We have some munchies too. And we hope you come along and join in the discussion. And we will also have more complete summaries of the actual findings of the first two roundtables that I encourage you to come and pick up, and hope to see you then. Thanks.